The Gospel today is from John chapter 10, beginning at the first verse. Even though we're still in the season of Easter, sometimes with this pandemic it seems that feels like it's still Lent, one long Lent journey, social distancing, fighting illness, and sometimes fear. So even though we proclaim the truth of Easter, Good Friday still looms, I think. Now today's Gospel from John is quite abstract. Jesus has something he wants to communicate to us, but this Gospel is full of symbolism, and it's so dense, it's difficult to understand sometimes what he means, beyond the very obvious. In fact, John even tells us outright, he says, Jesus used this figure of speech with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. And I think that's us sometimes too. Now, sadly, in the past, and sometimes still, this text has been used as a means of exclusion. Jesus says, "Very truly I tell you, anyone who does not enter the sheepfold by the gate, but climbs in by another way, is a thief and a bandit." So people have used this saying to enforce false boundaries, really to shore up their own power or their own feeling of security. They're labelling as thieves and bandits anyone who is unorthodox, different. Whether that means you have the wrong gender, the wrong sexuality, the wrong race, the wrong doctrine, belief, politics, liturgy, etc. Not everyone is going to get saved. That's the message that some people try to take out of this text. And their attitude really underneath all this is that Jesus doesn't love everyone. This pious concern for being correct and excluding others. The further we are driven into anger and fear, the harder it is for us to see any shades of subtlety. When we feel threatened, we sink back into black and white thinking very quickly. So all the shades of grey are made invisible by our drive for security. Everything becomes very rigid. Suddenly we love Jesus' image of the sheepfold with the gate that is going to keep some people out, because by implication that means it will keep those of us on the inside safe. So we will have a holy and secure isolation from those people who will no longer be a threat. So in this mentality, everything and everyone becomes rigidly locked down into place. We imprison ourselves and everyone around us into roles of good people and bad people. There's very little freedom in that place and very little love. When we first read this gospel, especially if we're feeling vulnerable or threatened, longing for security, all we can see are walls and barriers, boundaries, separation. That's what a fence with a gate is, yes? But that is not what Jesus is talking about when he says, "I am the gate." He's not trying to keep people out or even allow us to stay safely in. Nor is he trying to make us feel like we're not good enough to be let in, to join the insiders inside the sheepfold. Let us think for a moment. What is the purpose of the gate? It is to create an opening in the fence. It is to allow travel through the wall. It's a means of liberation, not a means of exclusion. When Jesus says, "I am the gate," it is his way of inviting us both in and out. He's telling us he is our way to safety, to entering a restful place where we know we are loved and protected. But he's also telling us that we will need to go back out through the gate into the world. It's his invitation to leave safety and security and go back out into a world of challenges. We might expect that Jesus would tell us that we are safe, but there is more to life than safety. We could understand that he does promise us sanctuary, but he also expects us to go back out and do the good work we are called to do, knowing that it's sometimes very hard. But Jesus calls himself the gate. He's not just saying there is a gate in all your carefully constructed, self-isolating walls. He's saying, I am the gate in all your carefully constructed, self-isolating walls. Jesus is the gate. He's made himself an entrance into our too often hardened hearts, and all kinds of people are going to get in. When we fully understand that Jesus is the gate, Jesus is the entry point into all change, depth, struggle, and love, it's exhilarating and a bit terrifying. As the saying goes, God loves us exactly as we are, and God loves us far too much to leave us that way. There's a story. Walking in the paddocks and the pine plantation with a friend who had 4 dogs. 3 of the dogs run everywhere, joyfully exploring the environment. But one of the dogs would only run in small circles right in front of his owner. No matter how far the other dogs went, this dog would only run in a tight circle very close to us. Why? Because, his owner said, this dog was kept for his entire life before coming to me in a very small cage. His body has left the cage, but his mind still carries it with him. For him, the world outside the cage doesn't exist. So doesn't matter how big and beautiful the paddock, he will never run across it. I can bring him here so he can have fresh air, but he's still running circles in his cage. On a good day, when we're feeling confident and happy in God's love, seeing the glory of God's people and God's creation all around us, grey is beautiful. We set aside the comforting security of black and white thinking, move into the shadowland between. Grey is then possibility, opportunity, treasure hidden in the field. When we're like that, we can deal with, even appreciate, subtlety, ambiguity, uncertainty, all those things that are so much part of our faith. But when we are hurting and weary, afraid, not only Can we no longer see the shades of grey? We no longer want to. We are the dog who carries the cage with him everywhere. We think we're keeping ourselves safe. We think we're obeying the rules, but really we're keeping ourselves in jail. We're refusing to open the gate in our hearts. We're refusing to see Jesus. But we know Jesus is patient with our willful blindness. He says to all of us, "I am the gate. Whoever enters by me will be saved and will come in and go out and find pasture." Sometimes, of course, we wish that there were no gate. Sometimes we wish that the barriers and the boundaries we've placed around our hearts were resistant to everything. But before long, God reminds us that that aching space in our hearts, where insight and possibility and all of these people, beautiful, flawed people, keep coming in. That is the very presence of Jesus, who brings us rest in green pastures beside the still waters. The Lord be with you.